All right, guys, today is Father's Day 2021, and I want to share something with you that I feel is very important to say. Yesterday, I read a question. It was a random question off of a website, and it was, what did you used to be so certain of that later on you found out to be completely untrue? And I had to think long and hard about that because I've been very sure about myself regarding a lot of things, and come to find out that I've been wrong. Some of them were consequential, some of them weren't. Uh, but I have a hard time narrowing it down to one thing, because if I'm going to narrow it down to one thing, it's going to be the thing that mattered most. But that really wasn't the question. It was just, what was something? Well, being that Father's Day is here, and I've pondered on it for more than 24 hours, I want to make it about this. I want to make it about my dad. Growing up, as a child, in your immature years, which is actually for quite a long time, I'd say at least up until 30 or 35, it was for me. But in your immature years, and you're not so mentally well-formed years, you think you know a lot of things. You think you have things figured out, especially where your parents are concerned. You've had years to observe things and form and shape an opinion, and a lot of the things that you feel are not without good reason. And you're not necessarily wrong about everything. But on this one thing, I'll have to say that I was wrong about, and I found out later on how wrong I was. My dad was a very busy man. Very busy man. He would hold down multiple jobs, and he was always, kind of not around. He was around, but I mean, he wasn't always as highly available as a child would like. You hear the stories about how much a child's father spent with them, and what that meant to them over the years. And my father wasn't always around. He was very, very busy. And my brothers would tell you that too. And so, you develop feelings about that. You begin to think, well, he just doesn't want to be around. And I can't say that I had absolutely perfectly good reason for believing that, because if you'd say something to him about it, you could tell he didn't feel that way. But nevertheless, as a child, in your own immature way, you feel sorry for yourself. You somewhat spoil yourself. Your parents don't always do it. Sometimes you do it yourself. And you convince yourself that somebody just doesn't love you. I in a way, I can't say that my father didn't love me, but he was not as available as I'd like him to be. And this is a hard issue for a lot of dads, because a lot of us feel that way. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. My dad passed away probably 16, 17 years ago. And I've had a lot of time to think about things since then. What I've come to realize is, as a father, during the course of all that time, I've raised 4 children. 2 of them are grown, and 2 of them are still, teenagers. Here's what I've discovered. While I'm not quite as busy as my dad was, I'm still pretty busy. But looking back over the years, I realize that he was just doing the best that he could. He had a lot of his own issues to deal with. He had his own insecurities. He had his own views on the way the world worked. He had his own struggles with his own parents and his family growing up that he carried with him all of his life. But one thing I can say for sure is that he always tried his best for us in regards to providing for us. My dad was a hard worker. That's why he was always busy. We struggled to make it a lot of times, much like many of you listening to this video. We struggled to make it, but we did make it. And we made it through a lot of stuff. A lot of really hard times. But my dad always pulled through, much like my mother did. This is Father's Day. And as I look at that now, I wish I would have been kinder to my father. I was close to my dad. I had a closer relationship with my father than the rest of my brothers and even my sister. But even then, I still wish I would have been a little more understanding, a little more patient, and given him a few more breaks and not been quite as selfish as I was. Not quite as self-centered as I was. But it's very difficult for kids not to be that way, because that's part of the nature of children. They have to kind of grow out of that. It's despite how kids may appear when they're very little, as they get to be older and into the teenage years, things change, and that's when bad attitudes begin to develop, and all this independent thinking, that's actually quite toxic. And some of it's good, but that's when you tend to be really hard on your parents. And I was hard on my dad. I gave him a hard time. I can't say that all of my brothers did. They weren't as close to him, but they just, it just wasn't the same for them. They just weren't, they just chose not to be around likewise. It was just, it was different for every single one. I had 3 other brothers. It was different for every single one. So I can't encapsulate them all into one description. But I did. I emotionally, I was difficult for him, and he had to worry about me. And I wish he wouldn't have had to, because it just would have been solved if I had just been a little more caring and compassionate as he was. But the truth is about my dad, and the truth about a lot of dads, and that's my point here, is that dads have their own struggles. They are dealing with things that you can't even imagine. You understand that when you become a father yourself. You see how difficult it is, and that's when your eyes begin to open, the veil is lifted, and you realize how much goes into being a father and how much you stay awake at night trying to figure out how you're going to provide for your kids, even in the long run. What will happen to them and to your wife when you die, if you should die? There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that contributes to the issues that crop up. What I want to say to you is, give your dad a break. If you're young and you're still living at home, be a little more understanding and compassionate. If you're older and you have your own kids, hopefully you're understanding some of this already. But even if you don't have kids, if you're an adult, and there's a rift between you and your father, clear it up now. Clear it up now, because he won't always be around, and mark my word, you will feel differently about it as time goes on. And you can't get that back. Make amends. Be the bigger man. And when you realize who your father really is, when he sacrificed for you, you'll have a hard time believing that you can be the bigger man. That's what I have to say about it.